days, instances of the behavior increase and continue to increase for 3 more days. What do we know is true in this scenario? Part of getting good at the exam and beating the exam is understanding what is the question really asking about, all right? Because they give you all this information, these behaviors, these designs, these interventions. What are they really testing your knowledge on? So in this question, what do we know? Well, we know we collected baseline data for 4 days. We're using a withdrawal design or a reversal or an ABA, whatever you want to call it. And then after implementing the intervention, so after baseline, instances of the behavior increase and continue to increase. So we know we had baseline, we put our intervention in, and behavior increased. That's all we know so far. What haven't we done? We haven't yet reversed our design. And why do we reverse or withdraw our design? We reverse and withdraw to check for experimental control. Unless we're doing that, there's really no way to say for certain that our intervention had any impact on the behavior. That's what this question is testing your knowledge on. Are we just going to assume our intervention increased this behavior or something we did increase this behavior? No, we can't do that. We have no way of knowing unless we withdraw the design. That's why we need to spend all our time up front evaluating the question and thinking through the question. It's going to make answering the question that much easier. So now that we know what they're asking and what they're testing on and our information, let's answer the question. So A, screaming was inadvertently reinforced. Now, how would we know this? How do we know this for sure? Well, we can't. Just because the behavior started increasing, we have no idea if it was inadvertently reinforced. Was our intervention reinforcing it? Were we doing it on purpose? We really don't know. Okay, A is assuming a lot of things that we don't know. Scratch off A. B, the intervention reinforced screaming. Again, do we know this for sure? Well, no. Just because we took baseline for 4 days and then we implemented the intervention and the behavior increased, doesn't mean the intervention led to the screaming increasing. There could be a million other variables going on that we're not accounting for. That's the whole purpose of withdrawing the intervention. So we can be sure we have experimental control or we don't. B is wrong. C, screaming increased in frequency. Do we know this for sure? Well, yes, it says in the question, after implementing the intervention, instances of the behavior increase and continue to increase. That's the only thing we know for sure so far, right? This behavior increased. Now we need to find out why. And then D, screaming was put on extinction. We have no proof of that. There's no information saying it was put on extinction. The only thing we know for sure, based on the information given, and we need to answer the question based on the information given, is C, screaming increased in frequency. Assume that we have multiple items labeled A, B, C, D, and E. If we conducted a multiple stimulus preference assessment with replacement, how might that look? Okay, stop, slow down. A lot going on in this question, especially when we start using variables and stimuli, it can get confusing. So let's slow down and break down what we're looking at. Well, what is this question testing you on? It's testing you on really on multiple stimulus preference assessment with replacement. So go ahead and define it. What is a multiple stimulus preference assessment with replacement? Well, that's when we have 3 or more items in an array. Whatever item is chosen, we put that one back, and then we replace the items around it. That's what we're looking for. So if we have these 5 stimuli, we're looking for a situation where whatever stimuli is chosen is put back and the other 4 are replaced. That's what we're looking for. So A, if the client chose C out of the first array, our next array would be A, B, D, and E. What's wrong with this? Well, the item that was chosen wasn't replaced or put back, right? We just took it out. So this is without replacement, not what we're looking for. B, if the client chose C out of the first array, our next array would be A, B, D, F, and E. Well, again, what's wrong with this? The item chosen, C, was not put back. This isn't with replacement. We're just putting a brand new array out there, right? C, if the client chose C out of the first array, our next array would be F, G, C, M, N. Okay, this looks pretty good, right? We chose C, we replaced C, or we put C back, and then we replaced the other 4 stimuli that weren't chosen. Is that a multiple stimulus preference assessment with replacement? Yes. C looks like our best answer so far. D, if the client chose C out of the first array, our next array would be F, G, K, M, and N. This one suffers from the same problem as B and A. C is chosen when the stimuli that is chosen in a with replacement, we put that one back, right? We put it back in the array. A, B, D, we've removed C, which we can't do. The only one that makes sense here with a with replacement design is C. The client chose C. The next array, C is put back, and the other 4 are replaced. Ted engages in attention-seeking behavior when his parents help his sister get dressed. If Ted started screaming yesterday as soon as his parents started putting on his sister's shirt, Ted's screaming would be considered a what? So this question is a little specific. It's a little pedantic, if you want to call it that, but that's what the test is. The test wants to know, by the book definitions of these things, right? In whatever way you can remember it, right? But they want to be specific. So what do we know? Well, we know Ted engages in attention-seeking behavior. Ted started screaming yesterday as soon as his parents started putting on his sister's shirt. So we're looking at Ted's screaming, right? This episode of Ted started screaming. Is Ted screaming a response class? Well, no. Response class is multiple responses, okay, that make up one class. We're only looking at this screaming behavior, the screaming instance, right? And we're only, right, looking at this one instance of screaming. And that's the important part here, okay? We know he has attention-seeking behavior, okay? But all we know is he screamed yesterday. We don't know the other responses. We don't know how many times it happened. We just know screaming happened once. Again, we have to be specific. We have to really narrow down on the facts, okay? The facts matter. The information really matters. Because if we look at B, behavior, we know he engages in attention-seeking behavior. Is screaming one instance of screaming a behavior? No, it's a response. One instance of this behavior is going to be a response. So Ted started screaming is just a response. The behavior encompasses everything. The screaming is just a single response. And when we look at D, that's what we're looking for. It's obviously not a consequence, okay, because it is a response. It's a response in response to the antecedent of the parents putting on his sister's shirt. Kind of a tricky question, right? But it depends. If we're really careful and we're really breaking down what the question is asking about and the information given, it becomes very simple. We're only looking at this one instance of screaming in the context of attention-seeking behavior. It has to be a response. One instance is a response. A behavior is all the responses. Answer here is D. As behavior analysts, when we assess verbal behavior, we are primarily concerned with what? So when we're talking about verbal operants, what's the most important piece of a verbal operant or a verbal behavior in ABA? And it's really the same thing as all behavior in ABA. What is the number one thing we're looking for? Is it tone or syntax? No, we're not really concerned with that. We're not speech therapists, right? We're not worried about the tone or the syntax of the verbal behavior, okay? So it really is with form and function. Now, form is like the topography, okay, what it looks like. Is form going to be more important than function? Well, no. We're only worried about the function primarily, okay? Are we labeling something? Are we gaining something? Are we engaging in social communication? As behavior analysts, when we assess verbal behavior, we're primarily concerned not with tone, not with syntax, not even with topography, but with function. Now, do we assess form? Absolutely, right? We're going to see how it looks. We're going to see the topography of it. Our primary concern, first and foremost, though, is why does this verbal behavior happening, right? Are they gaining something? Are they removing something? Is it self-stimulatory? These are all the questions that we have to ask ourselves first. Why is it happening? Then we can worry about things like form. So as behavior analysts, when we assess verbal behavior, we are primarily concerned with function. A behavior analyst is tasked with maintaining behavior technician performance. Which of the following approaches would be the least likely to meet the behavior analyst's goal? Personnel management question. People have so much trouble with supervision and personnel management. When in reality, personnel management, supervision is no different than working with a client. We're setting goals, we're modeling, we're evaluating, we're reinforcing. How do we maintain behavior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You just need to think about personnel management in the same way you would about evaluating a client. So in this case, a behavior analyst has the task of maintaining behavior technician performance. Which of these approaches is least likely going to help the behavior analyst reach that goal? Well, A, conduct an indirect preference assessment with all technicians. If I send out a survey, an email survey, asking technicians, what would you work for, or what are you willing, what do you want? Is that a good way to maintain behavior? Sure. If we get a bunch of responses that say, I want more praise, I want more money, all great things, all things we can try to use to maintain behavior. Nothing wrong with that. B, observe each technician for a session. If they seem to be doing what they were supposed to do, give them a raise. So what's wrong with this? Is this analytical? Is it going to be the best way to approach it? Not necessarily. So in B, we're observing them for a single session. And then the key word here is if they seem to be doing what they're supposed to do, give them a raise. Do we ever, when working with clients, go by seem to be doing? No. Everything we need to do needs to be based on data, right? We can't just sit there, observe them and say, well, they look like they're doing what they're supposed to do. Let's give them a raise. That's a very important phrase here. If they seem to be doing what they're supposed to do. This implies we're not taking a data-driven approach. We're just guessing. And we don't guess in behavior analysis, right? We don't make assumptions. B so far is definitely worse than A. Let's see C. Set goals for each individual technician and evaluate these goals routinely. That would be an excellent way to maintain behavior technician performance, something you should definitely be doing. And then D, administer monthly performance assessments for each technician. Well, that would be excellent as well, right? We can go in, we can actually assess them, their performance, right? We can take data, we can give feedback. D is way better than B, where we're just going in, observing, and then making an assumption or going off subjective opinion. Yes, you're doing well. No, you're not doing well. Think about if we did B, all the biases in play, all the variables in play. D is way better because it's a systematic performance assessment. B is just subjective observation. B is going to be the worst approach. That is going to be the least likely to meet the behavior analyst goal. Again, just like client work, right? Think about personnel management like handling clients. A student starts to run away from his kindergarten classroom when it's time to do handwriting. His teacher implements a response cost procedure in response to this new behavior. What might the response cost procedure look like? So very obvious what the question is asking here, right? They want to know about response cost. What do we do when we see a term? Define it. Define it in your head. Response cost. I am taking away something in response to a maladaptive behavior, typically used in a token system. It is a negative punishment procedure. Bam, I know everything now about response cost to answer this question. Now, let's look at the other information. Student starts to run away from a kindergarten classroom when it's time to do handwriting. What behavior are we probably targeting? Student starting to run away, right? So, knowing all this, let's try to answer the question. A, each time the student completes handwriting, they will earn a star. Is this a response cost? Well, no. Now, we're not for certain, but if anything, this would be more like a reinforcement, right? We're giving the student a star for doing what they're supposed to do, not a response cost. B, each time the student attempts to run away, the teacher will yell at them. Okay, well, this is a reprimand. It's a threat. Okay, it's an attempt at a punishment probably, but it's a positive punishment. It's certainly not response cost. C, each time the student attempts to run away, they will lose a star. All right, now we're talking, right? This looks like a response cost. Maladaptive behavior, run away. In response, we take away something, in this case, a star. C is much more a response cost procedure than both A and B. Let's check D. Each time the student attempts to run away, they will be sent to the principal's office. Again, we're not losing anything here, right? If anything, they might be able to escape with the D, right? Maybe this is negative reinforcement. You get to go to the principal's office for running away. The only one where we are removing an item or a stimuli in response, okay, to a maladaptive behavior is going to be C, right? The student attempts to run away, they will lose a star. Automatic behavior as it relates to the 4 functions of behavior could also be described as blank. This is a very easy question. However, the way automatic reinforcement is taught now, I feel is very confusing. A lot of people want to use sensory interchangeably with automatic, which is fine. But the problem is that it implies that all sensory behavior is automatic. And it's not always the case, right? If I am rubbing a sweater, or somebody's sweater that feels good, well, is that automatic? Well, no, right? That involves a socially mediated behavior. There's another person involved. Automatic means alone. That is the essence of automatic behavior. That is why it's one of the 4 functions, because the other 3 are socially mediated. Attention, tangible, escape, those are socially mediated. Automatic really means alone, where you are delivering reinforcement with no other social party involved. Okay. So automatic behavior as it relates to the 4 functions could also be described as A, behaviors that happen when someone is alone. Would be a great way to describe automatic behavior. Nobody else is there. It can't be socially mediated. That will be automatic reinforcement. Automatic behavior, I should say. Now, what about B? Behavior that happens to gain attention. Well, that's clearly not, right? Gaining attention is socially mediated. C, behavior that looks like hand flapping. Okay, be careful. What if my mom says, "Do you want an apple?" I don't say anything, and she says, "Well, flap your hands to get an apple," and I start flapping my hands. Is that automatic? No, that's socially mediated. We're worried about the function here, not the form, okay? C is not correct. We have to be very careful how we talk about automatic behavior. And then D, behavior that is socially mediated. Obviously, it's the opposite of that. It's behavior that happens singular, no social party needed. If anything, it's behavior that happens when someone is alone. That will be a fine way to describe it. The best answer here is A, automatic behavior as it relates to the 4 functions of behavior could also be described as A, behavior that happens when someone is alone. Okay, our company hosts a parents' night where parents can get together, meet each other, and share their experiences as parents of children with autism. If we take some really great pictures, how are we allowed to share these pictures on social media? This is an ethics question. We should get good at identifying what is and isn't an ethical question. In ethical questions, they want you to know the letter of the law. They want you to be specific. They want you to be black and white. So that's what we're going to try to do. This question is asking what? It's asking if you know the rules about posting on social media or posting your clients on social media. So do we know that? What does it say about posting on social media? If we have these pictures, A, we are not allowed to share pictures of clients on social media. Let's be careful about an answer like this, which is very strong. Okay, it's very concrete. It doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. We are allowed to share pictures of clients on social media, but there's things we need to do first. And that's how it is in the majority of ethical scenarios. Okay, something like A, which is just very strong without a lot of wiggle room, be careful about that. B, we can share pictures of clients on business social media, but never personal social media. Okay, so B is okay, right? Because it is true we can never share pictures of clients on personal social media, but it's not quite specific enough for business social media. We can't just go in and start sharing all of our pictures on business social. There are other things that we need to do first. C, as long as we have informed consent, we can share pictures of clients on business social media, but we must include a disclaimer. Okay, this is perfect. We have our night, we get informed consent from the parents, we share them on only business social, and we include a disclaimer saying we have a consent, blah, blah, blah. C is great, right? It's specific. It gives us leeway on posting pictures, but we are following the rules. C is a great answer to an ethical question. D, as long as we have informed consent, we can share pictures of clients on business social media. It's fine. However, it's missing what? It's missing the disclaimer part. So we need to get all those pieces in there. Now let's pretend C doesn't exist. D is going to be better than B. End of the day, we're looking for best answer, right? Best answer here is C. It's going to be the most complete. It's going to cover all our bases, and it's going to allow us to share pictures on social media ethically, okay, and in an approved way. So our answer here is C. As long as we have informed consent, we can share pictures of clients on businesses and personal social media, but we must include a disclaimer. What ethical rules govern the use of client testimonials for non-advertising purposes? All right, another ethical question. Should be very straightforward, very simple. We've got testimonials for advertising, right? For current clients, we have testimonials for advertising from past clients. And then we have testimonials for non-advertising purposes. What do the ethical rules say about non-advertising purposes? A, client testimonials can be used for non-advertising purposes. Yeah, simple as that. That's what the ethical rules say. If you have client testimonials, they are allowed to be used for non-advertising purposes. B, client testimonials cannot be used for non-advertising purposes. Not true, they can. C, behavior analysts cannot solicit testimonials. Again, not true. That's too strong. There are times we can solicit testimonials, but there are ways to do it. And then D, client testimonials can be used for non-advertising purposes as long as there is a disclaimer. Don't need a disclaimer. Nothing about a disclaimer is mentioned in this section of the ethics list. Kind of tricky, right? Compared to our last question. So A is going to be best. What ethical rules govern client testimonials for non-advertising purposes? A, client testimonials can be used for non-advertising purposes. All right. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We have new BCBA videos